Let's now look at the basis of hematoxylin and eosin staining, which we often abbreviate and just say H&E. First, just an important request please. Do not worry about being able to identify all the tissue components I will show you in the images that follow, even though I will probably mention what they are. I am using them only to illustrate different histological stains and what specific components in the tissues they stain. You'll have plenty of opportunity to study these structures where appropriate in this histology course syllabus. Hematoxylin and eosin is the most commonly used stain or dye in histology. An example of it is in this image of tubules in the kidney. Hematoxylin is a basic dye. It has a net positive charge on its coloured portion, whereas eosin is an acidic dye, and it has a net negative charge on its coloured portion. When you use hematoxylin and eosin together, it stains different components different colours. Without going into the details yet, hematoxylin produces the purple or bluish stain you see associated with those components in the tissue we'll go through in a moment, whereas eosin stains the tissue components a pinky red colour. And that's what you'll commonly see in most of your slides in your class slide box if you're completing a histology practical class. Let's just try to understand the term basophilia. Basic dyes, like hematoxylin, are going to react with the anionic components of cells and tissues, that is, those carrying a net negative charge. So when we look at anionic components of cells and tissues, when they react with a basic dye, those components are said to exhibit basophilia. And basophilia, or the degree of basophilia, depends on the pH used during the staining process. Some of the anionic components of cells or tissues that react with the basic dye are the carboxyl groups of proteins, phosphate groups of nucleic acids, and sulfate groups of glycosaminoglycans. And I certainly don't want to go into the chemistry of all these components in this lecture. It's just to give you the basis for what the staining technique used actually targets in the tissue components. If you use a pH of about 10, all those three groups of anionic components are going to take up the basic dye. If you restrict the pH to between 5 and 7, or in other words, it's slightly acidic to neutral, then you're going to only stain phosphate and sulfate groups of components in the tissue or the cells. And if you restrict the pH to less than 4, then you're going to only take up the stain of the sulfate groups. Now let's define what we mean by acidophilia. Acid dyes, like eosin, react with the cationic components of cells and tissues, especially ionized amino groups of proteins. So when we look at the cationic components of cells and tissues that react with an acid dye such as eosin, then those components are said to exhibit acidophilia. In the case of reacting with eosin, we sometimes refer to them as being eosinophilic, as well as being acidophilic. One problem, or at least one issue about acidophilia, is the reactions are not as specific as the reactions are with basic dyes such as hematoxylin. So with this background knowledge, in the next short lecture in this series on histological stains, I will show you a few images to illustrate what I've been talking about. This image, by the way, is showing you collagen here and smooth muscle here, but don't worry about this at this early stage in your histology course.